Hi, guys. I'm Danielle Johnson. I'm your host for today's podcast. So, I want to welcome you guys to the Fireside Chat podcast. I've got a great episode today. In this episode, I am interviewing Cat Weeden. She is the owner of Luxe Cheer in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she is one of the co-founders of the Small Cheer Gym Association. Last week, she made a post in the Small Cheer Gym Association group, which has just under 4,000 members. And she called forth for small gyms to unite.
Avengers! Assemble.
It was a powerful post, had a ton of comments on it, and I thought it was really important that we hear from Cat what her intention behind this post was and what her hope is moving forward for the industry. If you've been an all-star for a little while, she is definitely someone you've probably seen her name or you know her. And so this interview is about to be a great one. I hope you guys learn a lot about, the history of All-Star, but also what our path may look like moving forward as a small cheer gym. Hi guys, I am here today with Cat Weeden. She is in charge of the Small Cheer Gym Association Facebook group, and she owns a gym. So Cat, can you tell everybody, if they're not familiar with you, just a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Catherine Weeden, but I go by Cat Weeden. I am one of the two founders of the Small Cheer Gym Association. I also own a gym in Tulsa, Oklahoma called Luxe Athletics. And for about the last decade, I've found myself in this position of leadership amongst the small gyms. So it's been really pretty cool, but it's kind of why I'm here today.
All right. I would definitely say you have been a unifying voice among small gyms. Why is it important to do that?
What we realized about 8 years ago, was that there was a lot of movements happening in All-Star Cheer that felt like small gym wasn't being taken into consideration when they were making decisions. What we realized is that a lot of the problem was that the small gyms were not connected and they were not talking to each other. And we realized that, we're like the biggest part of the industry, but we're literally not communicating with each other. And so we're not actively taking part in roundtable talks. We're not getting on Zoom calls. We're not doing all this stuff. And so we were almost like disenfranchising ourselves. So we found out that very quickly that by us starting to communicate and build these bridges across these islands that we were on, we were much more powerful as a unit. We were much stronger together than we were apart. So we found that communication is really important, because otherwise everybody just kind of stays buried in their gym. And then it feels like the industry is just happening by us, right? Instead of actively taking part in it.
Yeah. And in your post, you clarified, but for those who may not be in your Facebook group, can you clarify what you consider small gym for this purpose?
Yes. So we, from the beginning, called this the Small Cheer Gym Association instead of the D2 Cheer Gym Association, because the idea is that you're just small. USASF and a lot of the governing bodies have their own definition of small gym, which is 125 athletes and under. We feel like there are gyms that are slightly larger than that do still read on a small gym scale. So in general, we kind of run with this idea that 150 athletes and under, not a part of a franchise. Some have multi-location, but small locations. But if you're not a part of a large national brand, if you are doing, a solo venture, if you are D2 in classification, or you are around 150 and under, we really feel like this does suit you. We've specifically not been super stringent on how we define it, because everybody's gym looks different and everybody's needs look different. And we have some gyms in this group that have 30 athletes, but they compete D1, but they're still small. So it really isn't for us a D1, D2 thing as much as it is, do you have limited resources? Are you in an area that's hard to grow? Do you feel like you've got other gyms around you that it's, again, hard to grow? So if you fit a couple of these different, attributes, we're going to bring you in.
And what percentage of the industry do you think falls into that category?
Well, we're told that we're about 83%, 80%. I think that we're probably closer to 90, 92%. There is a large, so that being told is by, one of kind of the overseers of the sport, but there's an entire world of gyms that are on another path. And then there's an entire world of gyms that are kind of on a third path, which is they're not necessarily falling under, open scoring system or USASF United scoring. They are doing their own path. So if you put all those together, I think that we are at least 93% of the industry, and that's conservative in a
Mhm.
guess.
I would actually agree with you. I mean, we've worked with thousands of gyms over the years with Next Gen, and then we've got lists of just everybody who's come to conferences and stuff like that. And I would agree with you. I would say a large, large majority are very small.
A
Um,
very large majority.
yeah, and you're not necessarily talking rec, right? We're talking specific elite.
We're really talking all stars. That being said, rec has been used 10 years ago as truly rec. Like you are part of like a school system, but you want to compete. And
Mhm.
some school systems have very strict rules about competing. So these rec gyms popped up that basically are affiliated but not with school systems. But there's a new thing that's been happening in the last, I'd say, 5 to 6 years, where there are small, what we would consider like D3 like gyms that are competing rec because the age grid's a little bit more open. The divisions are a little bit wider. A lot of events, they allow them to compete like 1, 2, 2,
Mhm.
3, 4, and they felt like it served their needs better. And for me, I'm like, if you're keeping a gym open, if you are giving kids a place to have a safe place and compete, I don't really knock you for being a rec all-star gym because that is serving the purpose for that market for those kids. And 99% of the time, it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with just finding a way for these kids to be able to compete. So for some people, they are using rec in an all-star way.
Mhm. So when you talk about limited resources for these or not just recreational gyms, but these small gyms, and that unifying could potentially help that, what does that look like to you? Like, what's the end goal that you're looking for?
I think the end goal to me, I can tell you what the end goal to me is not. The end goal to me is not there being 12 gym brands in 10 years and everybody falls under those 12
Mhm.
gym brands. Franchises and multi locations, we got to the place where they were kind of like swallowing and scooping up small gyms. And if that's the path that makes the most sense for your program, I get it. When I say limited resources, what I mean is we're kind of the mom and pops of this industry. We are usually singularly owned by a single person or a single entity. Sometimes there's investors, but most of the time it's a single person or a small group of people that are owned facilities. Usually you're looking at single location. You're looking at, under 200 athletes in the entire gym and program. Everybody wants a really large rec program, but most of us do not have a really large rec program. You are looking at under 10 usually all-star and or additional teams. So at the end of the day, we're looking at like you're really kind of classifying this group of gyms as being limited resources. But what we know is that even 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was really hard for small gyms to get top-notch choreographers, to get top-notch music, to get some of these brand deals with the different uniform companies or the different apparel. And then we've realized that the louder we've gotten, the more these companies have started coming towards us. You literally have entire groups of companies that are phenomenal. You take like a Glitter Stars. Glitter Stars is pretty much the uniform of a lot of small gyms right now. And they are
Mhm.
offering a phenomenal product that is just as competitive as, a varsity, a rebel, or whoever, just as competitive as the top brands, but at a smaller cost. And she's been really smart and to include small gyms, not only in picking, models for the company, but, being at the conferences that small gyms are at and seeking them out. So for me, like when we're talking about like creating better resources, it's just creating a shift to where instead of we're like the second group that they're thinking about when they're creating products, when they're advertising, that we become the first. Because some of these, again, companies and vendors have realized like that it's a much bigger market if you focus on
Mhm.
small, much
Mhm.
bigger market. It may not be as visible all the time, but the volume is much larger. So for
And
me,
I,
I guess as we go, that's what we're looking to do.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that you can see that in their marketing too. Some of the companies
100.
are using those huge, big name gyms, and Others are using the everyday gyms that you would go to a competition and be against, here in the Midwest or something like that.
Right. And I think even a while ago, it kind of was even like, advertising that you see out in the real world outside of cheer. Like, I think the idea that you're using these large gyms to sell everything was like, well, don't you want to be like them? Don't you want to emulate them? And I think that they realize that like our goal is not to become,
Hmm.
my goal is not to become one of them. Like
Hmm.
it's not. And our kids' goals in general are not to become like and be a part of those programs. Most of the kids in the small gyms want to stay in their small gyms. They want to grow with their program. There are limitations to each gym.
Hmm.
And so sometimes they find themselves at an impasse where it's like they want to stay with their programs, but the opportunities are not there. But in general, yeah, like a lot of the kids that grow up in small gyms want to stay there. They want to be there. Most of them are not looking over their shoulder at what's going on down the street, you know?
Hmm.
So I think the advertising towards other small gyms is brilliant, and using small gyms is brilliant because it's more relatable to us. And it feels like, well, that's a small gym friendly company.
Yeah.
Like they're going to care about my money. They're going to care about my design. They're going to care about my clients.
Yeah. Not to go too far off on a tangent, but like that's what we do on the show. I think it breeds into to cheerlebrity culture, right? Like
Oh
all
yeah.
of the kids in our small gyms, you're in Tulsa, I'm in Kansas City area, all
Mhm.
these kids that would not otherwise know some of those big gyms and stuff are now looking at the cheerlebrity culture and saying, "Oh yeah, maybe I do need to go to a larger gym to
Oh
be
yeah.
like."
Oh yeah. That's a whole, and not to go up. Yeah. We don't want to go on a total tangent, but that's a whole nother podcast. I mean, in that like there's a lot of problems when kids leave their homes and go to other programs. If a whole
Mhm.
family goes to another program, if you're going to a program that is local to you and your family is together, I think there's issues, but it makes a lot more sense. There's an entire culture of kids picking up and moving out of their house and moving with other people because we are we are allowing some gyms to be so romanticized and so at the forefront of every single thing you see in cheer. And these kids sometimes feel like I'm missing out if I don't go be a part of that, right? But that's
Mhm.
a really slippery slope because I mean, let's be honest, we're about like 15 years from there being a Netflix documentary on, you know, I was a host family kid for All Star Cheer and it ruined my life. Like,
Right.
you
Right.
know,
Yeah.
um, and again, there's always exceptions to rules where kids are going to be in a better situation if they get out of their home. So, like, I don't want to make this sound like it's a blanket statement, but in general, I do think that this cheerlebrity culture has led to transient kids, has led
Yeah.
to kids feeling like they need to hop and feeling like they need to go to what's next and what's better. And it doesn't really work out a lot of times for a lot of these kids. Some of them it does, but a lot of these kids, it does not work out well.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about what it doesn't look like, right? Well, what
Right.
does it look like? So I have a small all-star program here in the middle of Missouri. Like, what does it look like for me if we get this unification? Is it an awareness campaign or is it something I can tangibly feel in my gym once these gyms unite?
I think a little bit of both. So right after the pandemic ended, I kind of came on the small gym page and I kind of threw out like a we did it. Like if the pandemic had happened 5 years before, I think 50% of the small gyms in the country would have closed. No doubt. I think by unifying us and by us having a collective voice, what we're doing is we're strengthening each other by not feeling so solo and so alone. I think that only other all-star owners understand the loneliness that happens as being an owner, the decision fatigue, the uncertainty. Like there's something about being the person that's the end of the day, yes or no, that can be overwhelming, exhausting, isolating, and can be really, really hard, right? So, what does this tangibly look like? To me, the tangibles of this are the things that I feel like have come out of the unification. We do not have like a don't use list necessarily, but I do think that there's been a lot of this is a small gym friendly choreographer. This is a small gym friendly uniform company. We've got vendors in there that I think have realized like it is important to find us as a voice, right? How does that look in my gym? Instead of just buying products and uniforms and practice wear and stuff from people that I don't feel like are invested in my gym staying around. I feel like we're buying things now from people that understand, like, we can't pay $100 for a practice set realistically. We've been able to connect with other gym owners and go, hey, have you thought about going this route? Have you thought about creating your own stuff? Have you thought about changing what you're doing in the pro shop? For a lot of people, just altering how they pro shop has kept them alive in the last 3 years. You know, if you're not pro shopping and doing a lot of that yourself, like, you are literally financially losing out. I think the shift in the brain from all-star gyms and small gyms talking about, like, if your program is only all-star heavy but doesn't do anything else, like, you're in trouble. And it's kind of helped people go, okay, well, we feel really busy, we feel really overwhelmed, but I need to focus on rec. I need to focus on quarter season team. I need to focus on rentals. I need to focus on all this. So I think the tangibility of our unification is information that is relative to a program like yours, and that is feasibly like you can literally create, do, and implement that stuff because you see another program that's in a market like yours doing it. So I think the unification is not only pushing the industry in a direction that is friendly for us, but I think information has been the most valuable resource we've had. You know, I bought bling directly from this company. I didn't go through a third party. I went through a company that, like, creates the bling. When you're saving $15 an outfit, a shirt immediately, that's money that's going right back into the gym. You know, I need to buy new equipment. Well, we all know now that there's a couple of companies that literally are going to take your money and you're never going to see the equipment. We didn't know that stuff. We didn't know that stuff 5 years ago. So I think tangibly that our unification is financially really easy to see. I think it is structure-wise of people branching out, of just being focused only on all-stars is really easy to see. But I also think that financially we are stronger because we are diversifying our businesses. And I think that we're making better choices, even with vendors. I think that it's a great place where if somebody says, I really had an awesome time at Gold Rush Fort Worth, like, somebody goes, okay, they're like us. They've got 25 kids and Gold Rush made them feel like rock stars. Like, I'm sold. I think it has changed the course of how we gym for a lot of gyms. There are gyms that are not a part of small gym. We have almost 4,000 people in the group that are coaches, owners, and vendors. But I do think that it has been really life-changing for a lot of gyms. And it's not me directing this. It is just people connecting and people helping with shared experience. So I think tangibly, if we want this industry to continue to move in a way that thinks about us before they make decisions, we have to stay unified. And I think that if we want our gyms to last longer than 5 years, we have to figure out how programs are able to diversify outside of All-Star. So if next year 15 less kids walk in the door, you're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I actually taught a session this past weekend, and it was geared toward those who live in small towns, like how to make it in a small town. But really, it could have just as easily been toward small gyms. And one of the things that I said to them was, the same way that you want vendors to give you a chance with your lower minimums, we have to consider some of these new vendors, and we have to look at them and say, okay, what can you do for me, and try them and test them. And we've got to get away from, like, keeping up with the Joneses.
Oh, 100%. And I agree completely. Again, I talk a lot about, like, 5 years ago. We are now in a situation where new vendors are popping up. And yeah, it's hard because you don't want to get, screwed. You don't want to get, like, you don't want to lose your investment. You don't want to order something that doesn't work. But I'm always one that, like, preaches that, like, a healthy community for All-Star Cheer is one with competition. Whether it is other gyms in your area, whether it is multiple competition companies in your area, or whether it is multiple vendors. It's actually not healthy for us as an industry to only have 4 uniform vendors.
Right.
It's not healthy for us as an industry to never directly go to manufacturers. Like, that is the fastest, easiest, smoothest way sometimes to lower your overhead costs, but increase your profit, right? It is not healthy for us to see new vendors and not bring them into the fold, because at the end of the day, they could be phenomenal, one of the top 5 in 10 years. But, like, if we don't give them a chance, it's never going to happen. But no, I completely agree, which is we have to make room for the new. In the
Hmm.
same way we have to make room for new all-star gyms in your city, you have to make room for new competition companies, for new vendors. Like you have to make the room because again, a healthy atmosphere is going to be one with lots of options. I always kind of push like options, options, options. We should not be limiting our options. We should be increasing our options as we go.
Yeah. And I think some of this, as we do it, is education for our parents, because my athletes and my parents will see a uniform from one of those Big 12 and have no idea that that same uniform in my program would cost $1,000.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
yeah, and so I've kind of had to educate parents over time that one, there's probably a brand deal going on, but two, the amount of uniforms that they're ordering cuts the price. I mean, that's basic economics
Mm-hmm.
that we wouldn't have with 80 elite kids.
Oh, all of the above. They're getting brand deals. A lot of these really expensive uniforms are free or they
Mhm.
are really close to free, especially for the top tier teams. They're using it as a form of advertisement. They're walking billboards. So we put this crazy, extravagant, extremely blinged out uniform, and there's going to be somebody out there, multiple somebody's that say, I want that uniform, but in my colors. It is a walking
Right.
advertisement. But yes, our parents can get tricked into thinking that's what they do, so that's what we should do. Those uniforms, without the gym making anything, are six, seven, $800. And if you're not making anything on a uniform, then you actually can't even afford to buy uniforms.
Hmm.
Like if the uniform is $5, you cannot sell it for $5. And
Yeah.
sometimes I see owners that are like, I told our parents the uniform's going to cost me, not real numbers, but 59.99, and I'm only charging 65. And I'm like, oh my God, girl, you're actually losing money. This
Right.
like you're breathing and you're losing money. You know what I mean? But yeah, so keeping up with the Joneses is a problem in our industry. I feel like it's overall getting better, but education is really important. And a lot of times, the first number these vendors throw out to you is not the real number. You have to be able to bargain and talk.
Hmm.
And well, I love that design you just sent me, but we are $55 over budget and I'm not going over budget. What do we need
Right.
to adjust? If you give somebody a budget, especially in this industry, they're going to exceed that budget.
Hmm.
So, me, I'm like, I run this two different ways. If I know my budget for something is $200, I'm letting you know my budget for this is 165.
Yep.
So when you go over budget, I'm still not going to be happy and we're going to find the middle ground, but never do I give an actual budget, to be honest. Because I feel like it doesn't give you wiggle room. Also, there's dynamic pricing in uniforms across all these brands.
Hmm.
The same uniform that costs you $400 costs somebody else $600, costs somebody else $300.
Right. Right.
And they don't want us talking about that, but there's dynamic pricing that happens.
Hmm. Yeah, I put out my concept of a design to five different companies this year, and there was like a $300 to $400 difference, and some of them
Sweet.
said we can't even start making them until $500. Like we
Mm-hmm.
couldn't even attempt that customization until then.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And if you ask the judges, they'll tell you they don't really actually care about uniform. They'll
Yeah.
also tell you they don't really care about the music. To me, at the end of the day, like the uniform and the music are more of I want you to feel like a rock star when you step on the floor.
Hmm.
What makes you feel like you're in character, like you are about to go be the best thing you've ever seen in your life? What music makes you feel like you are unstoppable and you can take on the world? You know, and that doesn't mean it has to be $1,700. It just means it has to make you feel something, right? But the
Yep.
judges will tell you they do not care at all.
Yep.
They do not care about the uniform. We care way more than they care.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely. I think the uniform and the music is really to get your kids excited and to get them into the
Yes,
routine.
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah,
To me,
for sure.
that's it. And so it's like, how do you do that without going into debt?
Yeah, for sure. So let's move on for just a minute here to Worlds. And I'll be really honest, I don't have Worlds teams. I've never had Worlds teams,
Mhm.
but I know that that is something you're really passionate about is ensuring we have the right divisions at Worlds. Can you talk a little bit about why that's beneficial?
Yes. And to clarify, we are talking like USASF
Yes.
level 6, 7 worlds, not All
Yes.
Star Worlds, which is an awesome event also, but not what we're talking. So, Worlds, which is the best of the best, the tippy top of the industry, which really represents probably less than 1% of the entire industry. The World Cheerleading Championship is a super important event. And to me, the event really encompasses more than just like who wins that event, right? At the end of the day, people have to find a path within your gym. They have to be able to feel like if I stay at your gym and I reach my full potential, like I can stay here and be a part of that, right? So for some gyms and some small gyms, not a lot, you go all the way through level 6, which gets you to, the USASF Worlds. There are some programs that only get to 5, some that only get to 4, and I feel like you have to do what's best for you. So at the end of the day, there were 2 divisions when Worlds started, right? There was a co-ed and there was an all-girl. And then it has slowly expanded over time. And then it became more of a real Worlds event because international teams started coming in. As we go, there's just a lot of conversations about, is this, number one, a true world championship? Because a lot of American teams never compete against international teams, is the truth. Is it a national championship for the United States teams and a world championship for the international teams? There's a lot of talk about whether Worlds should be this big event or whether it should be small. I'm a believer that at the end of the day, the whole purpose of Worlds is to figure out the one team in each division that is the best, right? So I don't care if there's 30 teams in the division. If the one that wins is the best of that division, I feel like it's right, right? Mm-hmm. For me, I don't need there to be only 10 teams there to get to that one. I think that if you meet the minimum standards, if you go for it, then the idea is that you're getting ranked within this world's, atmosphere. Okay. So there's a lot of conversation about like, should Worlds be smaller? To me, it doesn't make sense. As gyms stay around longer and push to level 4, 5, 6, I think that Worlds should continue to get bigger because that shows that there are more gyms participating in Worlds, and that becomes a better actual pick of the entire country. Right now, Worlds is kind of like, of the 15% of the gyms that could qualify for Worlds, this is the 1%, right? Okay. So then the next controversy is, are there too many divisions or are there not enough divisions? I think if you're competing against like individuals and like programs and like skills, it makes sense. So the international teams, truly international, Canada, England, Australia, they can compete in level 5 at Worlds. We as United States cannot compete in 5. We can compete in 6 and 7, right? So there are divisions that are just for level 5 programs that like are just level 5 teams. I think that those are needed because cheerleading is much older in the United States than it is anywhere else. It's still really, really young outside of the United States. And honestly, they're doing some stuff better than we're doing by creating avenues for older people to get into cheer at an older age and stay in cheer. Whereas we kind of throw you out like after 18, 19. Mm-hmm. So there's level 6 and level 7 divisions, level 6 and level 7 divisions. Worlds is also split by age, right? So we're split by level 5, 6, 7, but then we're also split by age. We're split by senior. You have to be a senior team to be at Worlds. And then you can be an international team. Those are the only 2 age splits. From there, we also have an additional split of whether you are a non-tumbling team. And as a non-tumbling team, you can be in 5, 6, or 7. Or if you're a tumbling team, you can be in 5, 6, 7, right? So we already have kind of like these splits that happen at every competition, right? Your junior level 2 doesn't go against somebody's senior level 2. So we understand that there are splits based on age. Okay. As we have gone and as we've developed, there have been a couple different times in the instances where USASF and or the people that are in charge have decided that in order for Worlds to stay healthy and continue to grow and for there to continue to become the next round of really great gyms, there has to be a better entry point into Worlds, and there has to be a division that makes sense based off of level of or amount of athletes, resources, right? So about 5 years ago, we had extra small. Actually, it was more than 5 years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago, we had extra small. For one season, extra small was 14 athletes and under. You could only have one World team and be a part of it. And it pretty much was a small gym division. And it was phenomenal. It's probably the best Worlds experience I've ever had. We've had Worlds teams for 10 out of our 11 years. That extra small division really created like the next generation of Worlds teams that pushed into that atmosphere, right? After a year, they ended up opening it up to everybody because there was a lot of complaints across the larger gyms that they felt excluded, as if they didn't already have enough divisions, but whatever. I digress. So extra small opened up, and as we anticipated, everybody jumped into extra small.
Mhm.
Okay. Because in the beginning, extra small was sold as we would never do that because it's not enough kids on the floor to financially make money. It'd be too hard to bring in choreographers. We don't want these small teams. And then people realize that if you can cut down from your best 22 to your best 14, you were actually really good. Right. So at the end of the day, we always knew that there was going to be this ability for people to jump into this division years ago because you could just literally take out some of the diluting of skills, right, and strength by just getting down to a
Mhm.
smaller number. Okay, extra small opened up for everybody. And then pretty much the second extra small opened up for everybody, there was a group of us that went to USASF and said, we need something. You just took away extra small. It was magical. It was awesome. We need something. So here's where the limited divisions come about. At the end of the day, USASF created limited. They are the founders. They are the ones who made it. But there are some of us that basically were the ones that continuously stayed on them about it. And I'm one of those people, right? I'm one of those people that championed for this division, help kind of determine what it would kind of look like. And the idea behind limited is that you have one world team that we are all supposed to be of similar resources, right? Okay, so this is a really roundabout way to answer your question, but you kind of have to know where we came from to get to where we're at right now.
Yep.
So the idea behind limited was there was not an initial push for it to be called D2, even though D2 probably is the actual best categorization of this division. The idea was you only had to have one world team to be able to be in it, and we're supposed to be against like teams. When limited was announced, it was this huge win for us. And it was a really huge win for all these gyms like mine who have been like fighting it out in worlds. And hope is what these kids need, right? So the kids need hope. They need belief that they can be successful. That doesn't mean we need a fast track to a globe. We don't need a fast track to a win,
Right.
but a kid needs to know that they can compete for your gym in your uniform under your logo and have a shot at finals. That doesn't mean that they get it. That just means that they've got this shot, right? You've got some gyms that are in their 30th year, and we've got gyms like my gym in its 12th year is considered a baby still in this industry. And there are gyms in year 5, year 6 that are even younger, right? So we're just trying to compete against other gyms that were similar.
Mhm.
That very first year of limited was awesome. Awesome. What happened was what we thought was going to happen, which is there was a lot of people that could have qualified for limited that basically turned their nose up at limited. And they were just kind of like, we think this is ridiculous. Like, we don't think this division should exist. There should not be a fast track to a globe. I mean, there was, listen, there are things that I won't do, and forget when people talk nasty about divisions and or policies and procedures that help small gyms. Like, I will never forget people that
Mhm.
say horrible things about steps forward that help the masses, right?
Mhm.
So we had some people that were really, really, really critical of limited and really didn't like it, but immediately limited strengthened the small gym immediately. You saw teams that were in 5 that started converting into 6. You saw the uprisal of junior 5s again that had kind of fallen off in small gym. We've seen more like small all girl and co-ed 5s in the last couple of years by limited basically creating this path to world within your own program. The whole point is just within your own program, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
after the first year of limited, what happened was a lot of these gyms that were really critical of limited realized, like, I can avoid the big 12 gyms of all-star cheer if I go into limited.
Mhm.
So that very first year, some of those teams that qualified just already, but they were really large in size, jumped in. In the second year, people started pushing off additional worlds teams to get into limited. By the third year, it's really kind of being used and abused. The intention of the vision is not being held true, which is kind of how we ended up here on this blog today, on this,
Yeah.
on this podcast today,
Yeah.
which is I basically called a call to action that, like, we're going to have to stand up and decide that the direction that limited is going right now, where people that have great resources that are not small, that could be very, very, very successful in the standard divisions are hiding in limited.
Mhm.
And there needs to be policy and procedure for people to move on and move out of limited back into the standard division.
Mhm.
I don't know if that fully answered your question, but that kind of gave you where we started to how we got here.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of those small gyms that don't have worlds teams yet, realistically, they should be invested in this because
Oh, they should
everyone's
be
goal,
really invested.
Yeah, everyone's goal is to allow your athletes to level up within your own gym and not feel like they have to go an hour up the street to join a team.
You hit the nail on the head. So that right there, okay. I Lux was a combined. This is gonna be fast. Lux was a combination of two small gyms. I was a director of one, and then there was another one, and basically we pulled together because neither of us could really get past level 3, 4. We were like, but if we get together, those athletes will stay together, and those athletes that we get to level 5, 6 can like be joined with more friends, right? So before the gyms were combined, what we realized is like it almost was like I never could say back then, like, one day I want to have a world's team because it felt so unrealistic. It felt so, if I've got 30 kids, 40 kids, 50 kids, how can I ever get there? But I was like training the kids to get there, right? Like I was teaching them the fulls, well, my director, Wes, I was teaching them the stunts. I was teaching them everything there was to be about it. But it felt like I couldn't even vocalize one day I'd like to have a world's team because it felt preposterous and it felt like I'd be laughed at, right? And then when we saw this ability to put the two gyms together and create a stronger program, I finally out loud was able to say, we're doing this because I really want a world's team and I really feel like we could do it. And I think there's a lot of gyms right now that could go down the path of worlds and that could be there in 3 and 4 years, but they're afraid to even say it. They're afraid to put it out there. They're afraid that, like, how do you get from level 3 to 6? A lot
Right.
faster than you think if you have a plan. A
Mhm.
lot, a lot of times we think in cheer, you have to be the best at every level to move to the next one. We keep kids at 3 for so long because you didn't win every event. Why would we move to 4? That's not how the thinking goes when you have a world's program. And even when you go to like the Big 12 gyms of the country, it is 50 level 3 kids can become, 35 level 4 kids that can become
Mhm.
20 level 5 kids that can become 14, 12 level 6 kids. And you assume there's going to be attrition along the way. And you
Right.
assume that along the way, you may be in level 4 and you may get everything we need you to get to move to 5, but that doesn't mean you're going to win out level 4. There is a complete mindset change once you start going through to worlds. And I think that a lot of small gyms, and I believed that you had to be like the summit or all-star worlds winner at a level to move up to the next one. And
Mhm.
that is what's holding gyms back level wise more than anything else, is just this belief that you have to be perfect. And
Mhm.
you just have to keep moving forward.
Yeah, you are speaking my language right now.
Yeah, you just have to keep moving forward.
Mhm.
And it's funny because like at Luxe Cheer, we're really overall, we're probably one of, we're on the stronger side of D2. We're on the bigger side of D2. We're on the stronger side of D2. We have some years that are really great. And we have some years that are struggling. But every once in a while, like we'll have other gyms that will be around us or at an event. And they're like level 3s are just phenomenal. Their level 4s are phenomenal. And I'll kind of look at my coaches and I'll be like, I remember those days back before we had worlds
Yeah.
when every like lower level team was so stacked, because when you don't have 6, every great athlete goes to 5. Well, if you don't have 6
Right.
or 5, every great athlete goes to 4. If you don't have 6, 5, or 4, every great athlete goes to 3. And then that 3 team is phenomenal. And that
Yeah.
is what works for a lot of people in their markets. My push to everybody would be buy into the dream.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid of the dream. Message me, send me a DM. I will talk you through it. And I will talk you through like being brave enough to put out in the world, like that's what you want. Make a 3-year plan. And worlds is not the end game. You do not have to have a worlds team to be successful. But I do think when you're talking about attrition of kids that are talented, if you don't keep offering things 4, 5, 6, you're going to lose talented kids that
Mhm.
love you, that would cheer for you until they graduate and move on,
Mhm.
but they also see a loss of opportunity,
Right.
you know? And it's hard. It is hard.
Yeah. And they only get so many years to do this before they either
Correct.
move away to college or start a career or something.
Correct.
So,
And that ticking time bomb is why kids start packing up and moving across the country. And you're
mhm.
like, it's unfortunate. Again, I'm not saying every gym needs to be a world's team, but
Sure.
if that's something that you feel like you would love to see your kids in your uniform on the world stage, you have to make a plan for it, right? I will
Mhm.
tell you, the very first time we competed at Worlds as Lux, that very first year when I was like part of what we did this merger for was to create this team. That very first time that we were like in the hole at Worlds before Luxe was going to compete on the world stage for the very, very first time, I talked to the kids, let's go, guys, work together. I walked away from them in the hole and I literally cried for 7 minutes. I mean, I literally like they used to make you like sit and listen to the music the whole time before they would get on the stage to make sure it was right.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sitting there with the earphones on and just crying and just being like, I don't even care what they do. Like, I can't believe we got here. And then we went on the stage and honestly, we had like, 11 points of deductions because Worlds is like the craziest deduction system. And I just remember thinking like, we did it. And the next year it was like, well, how do we go a little better? Right.
Yep.
So the dream wasn't world championship. The dream was getting those kids there in my uniform.
Yeah. And I like hearing that that's coming out of Tulsa because, to be honest, I've been to Tulsa a million times. It's not a huge city. You have maybe 4 or 5 story buildings. Like,
yeah,
that's as big as it gets. You have a convention center though, so you're killing us on that.
Our downtown is not bad, but Tulsa is not the biggest city in the world. There's some really good cheerleading that comes out of Tulsa. We've got some really, really good high schools here. We've got we've got probably 4 really great all-star gyms. I mean, in the Tulsa Metro and another 4 to 5 outside of the Tulsa Metro. And I'm friends with most of them and we literally talk multiple times a week. And so it's a pretty good community, but it is not a Dallas. It is not in the Metro of Kansas City. It is not a Houston. It is a small market.
And a lot of small towns, I think, that are surrounding Tulsa.
A lot. Yes. And we have kids traveling from an hour away to be on, Youth 3. And, sometimes you can get so wrapped up in the gym business that you forget to think to yourself, like, my God, they are getting on the road, for an hour. The second school is over to make it to Youth 3, to make it to Youth 2 for that opportunity. So it just reminds you have to keep going, right? Yeah. People depend on you. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward, as you think about the future of All-Star Cheer, what can small gym owners do right now to help push forth this effort?
I need support. So I am really, really happy to be like vocally loud about stuff. That's easy for me. And I've kind of created that path where I can get myself to tables that need to have things discussed. That being said, when it feels like it's just Cat Weeden in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that feels this way, it is a challenge. When it is, we've got a lot of people behind our backs, it's a lot easier. So my call to action last week was pretty much like, I need everybody to wake up, pay attention to what's going on, because it's really easy to bury your head in your gym because it's overwhelming. I mean, again, being a gym owner is overwhelming, but I need everybody to rally, and I need us to not be afraid to ask for things that make our gym lives better. We start thinking we're just a drop in the bucket, but y'all, so are the big 12 gyms of the industry. And the best thing that they do is, irregardless of whether they like each other, regardless of whether they are competitors or not, they work together to move the industry. And I'm like, if these people can work together, we can work together. But if we work together, we are much bigger and louder, and we are, 100 ants that can pick up a house. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're literally like, so right now what I need everybody to do is tap in and to not be afraid of asking for what we need. The powers that be, even at the Open Championship, like, they'll tell you they want to hear from you.
Yep.
They want to hear from you. Varsity wants to hear from you. USASF wants to hear from you, but we're so afraid of bringing things to the table because we don't want to feel like ungrateful. We don't want to feel like we're going to get punished for being vocal. We don't want to feel like this is just what Cat Weeden needs in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Most of the things that are challenges to us are challenges to everybody. Like, we're just not saying it out loud. But if you talk to, Heidi at the Open, she will tell you, like, I would 100% rather have a conversation that is not reactionary, that is like proactive. Like, what can we do going forward versus you're mad at an event in December, 2 days before Christmas. Like, at that point, everything's reactionary and the movement is not happening. Like, in December, things are not rapidly changing. In the summer, things can rapidly change, right? So what I need is for everybody to, again, this is not attack, and this is not everybody, try to create something that works just for you, but there are broad issues across all of the groups, whether you are completely independent, whether you are Open Series Championship, whether you are United, there are broad things that we need to collectively come together on.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I would like there to be more of a discussion on the Open Series Championship and United being able to be more interchangeable. It used to be interchangeable, and so you could go to whatever events were around you. And again, I think a healthy market is one where we have options, right? I don't like this gang thing that we have going right now where you're like Open Series Championship gang or you're United gang. Like, I don't like that because I think our kids lose and I think our pocketbook loses. If you've got United and Open Series Championship events around you, you should be able to go to whichever ones you want that line up with the correct date and that keep your families from traveling if you want to not travel, and that have the best prizes and options. And right now we're having to dodge events that may be right next to you to go to other events because that one next to you is not under the umbrella that you're under, you know?
Right.
So
Right.
I just want options.
Well, and I think also it makes everybody in the industry better because, like, we've already done our choreography because they just were already in town and it saved our families a bunch of money. But a choreographer who doesn't have to say, oh, yeah, I need to get in my United brain right now, or I need to get in
Yes,
my OCS brain right now. Like,
100%.
it's so much easier. And then, you know, every season I've still gone to AccuScore and these poor judges are like trying to, you know, they're judging one event one weekend and one event the next weekend, and they're having to kind of go back and forth and say like, okay, I got to switch my brain over. Like, it
Oh,
gives us
yeah.
better people in the whole industry if you don't have to play between two score sheets.
And I get how we ended up here. Like,
Right.
it was like we all were kind of under the same scoring and we were all under the same age grid. And then I think that there was a push on both sides to
Mhm.
differentiate, right? There was a
Right.
push on both sides to create a difference between the two, right? And
Mhm.
I think that what they thought was that if I create a big enough difference, everybody will stop going to that event and they're just going to go to mine. And it's like that happened, but we did it unhappily. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, our competition schedule 5 years ago had everything. We went to Independence. We went to what would be considered Open Series events. We went to Varsity United events, and then now it's all pushed one direction. But to be honest, there are a lot of really great events that I'm missing out on
Right.
because I cannot change my routines. And they're like, well, there's like this happy spot in between the two, assuming your kids can do those skills. Like,
Right.
some of those skills that cross over between the two events may not be skills that your kids can compete in a
Mhm.
way that is safe and or that is realistic.
Right.
You know, Craig Hallbrook with Open Championship has been one of my great friends for 20 years, and his brain is so locked in on progression and how do you really determine who's the best of the best. And when you hear him talk about it, he's so passionate about it, and his brain just is really set into like, how do you decipher the good from the great.
Mhm.
You talk to the Matt Swartz and the Stephanie Alberetti's from United, and they're looking to the future because everything that way leads to worlds, right? So
Mhm.
it's like that path leads to USASF. So everything is like just push level to level up. And how does it make sense going up? So you've got these people that are the greatest brains in cheerleading, and I feel like are working against each other instead of with each other because they're two different companies, which I get, but it's like we lose. Like,
Right.
we lose by there not being a more overlap between the two. So, I mean, for me, it's like, what do you want? World peace. Like, like there's just a lot of things I want. And I understand how we got where we're at. And some of it was passive aggressive from some of the sides to get where we're at. But I do think that as an industry, we are better when we have more options. We are better when we can choose a path that makes the most sense for your program. We are better when we go to the event that makes the most sense based off of every other factor, right? School cheer, conflicts that make sense based off of holidays, that makes sense based off of all this stuff. So, I
Yeah.
mean, again, what do I want? World peace. Like,
So I have one last question for you. As being the voice of so many things in the industry on behalf of small cheer gyms, you brought up that people have to be, they shouldn't be afraid of the backlash or the politicism
yeah.
in the industry. Have you, being the voice, have you experienced any of that
Oh,
yourself?
100%, but not in the way that you would think. So when this kind of started, I was really worried about my kids being punished. I'm just to be honest. I
Mhm.
was really
Mhm.
worried about it, but I was like, okay. I basically told my coaches, I'm nervous that we're going to kind of get punished for what I'm doing. So I need us to like make it really hard for them to punish us by doing what we have to do. Like if you
Mhm.
don't make mistakes and if you don't have problems, like it's a lot harder for people to kind of like hit you on the score sheet, right? And to be
Mhm.
honest, my coaches were like all in. They were like, we got you. We got it. And so that was my biggest concern was like getting punished. But to be honest, that hasn't happened pretty much at all. And I kind of laugh. I'm like, my kids can like mess it up for themselves. Like they
Yeah.
can go out there and miss tumbling and stunts on their own. They don't need any help, right? But the backlash to me comes from just people being unhappy with you or just feeling like you can be a nuisance. But I'm pretty like, I mean, like I feel like my spine is made of steel, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
I am not a person that like desires like likability. Like you don't have to come up to me and you don't hurt my feelings if like you don't love me as a person. It doesn't bother me. I'm not a people pleaser. I am not a person that puts a whole lot of stock in people loving you all the time, right? And so I think that there's been a lot of times over the years where there have been people that I look to as great leaders in the industry that have been really unhappy with me on the stance. But to me, I'm like, am I being consistent? Consistently, my concern is how does it hurt small? There are
Yeah.
times that I'm pushing for things that honestly hurt my gym because we are larger of this small, right?
Mhm.
So there are things and policies that I am going, the people want this that I know could negatively affect my program, but I'm not going to not do it because if it's the will of the people, it's the will of the people, right? But I do think that there have been many times that I've been iced out by people and people have
Mhm.
been really unhappy with me just for being this way. There have been meetings that I've been into where like literally the meetings before the meeting even starts in a room full of 100 people, I'm being told, listen, Cat Weeden, like you are not going to be the only person talking and you are not going to get to run this meeting. And in all
Mhm.
fairness, those are times when people that I don't even know will be like, that's rude. Like, if
Mhm.
we want her to speak for us, she's going to speak for us and you're going to stop. Like, so that's been great. But there's a personal also amount of like stress that I put on it. Like, am I stepping on toes? But to be honest, I just feel like as long as my compass stays that this is something that is either hurting the small gym and it needs to be rectified, or it's something that could really help us stay around and stay strong. Like I'm going to stick my feet into the mud. I'm going to anchor myself and we're going to ride out the storm. So
Mhm.
I do not feel like there's been a whole lot of punishment. I feel like
Mhm.
there's been a lot more, temporary unhappiness with me, but my response is, well, I'm unhappy with you too. So like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're not my mom. Like I'm not
Yeah.
sad that you're disappointed in me because I've been disappointed in you for 6 months. So
Sure.
so I think it takes a certain amount of kind of like not giving a shit. I don't know if I can say that. Sorry. I think it takes a certain amount of not caring about people's specific feelings as long as we're doing what's right for the industry. And if whatever we're doing helps small gym, I'm in, right? I was kind of laughing. People were like, who are you rooting for? And I'm like,
Yeah.
anybody small at any point in time. I can lose to another team that's like me and cheer them on and cry for their success. You
Mhm.
know, I don't like not fair fights. You're not going to see a 10th grader fighting a 7th grader and people are going to cheer that on. They're not
Yeah.
cheering for the 10th grader. They're cheering for the 7th
Right.
grader.
Right.
They're cheering for the 7th grader to lay you out. So, I guess long and short is there have been times I do not feel like personally our kids have been punished on the floor. I do feel like there have been some questionable AccuScore experiences where I think that there are people that lean towards, well, we're not going to give her way because she's kind of in opposition to us. But to me, like again, AccuScore should be very black and white. Like,
Mhm.
and I'm like a rule follower. So when there's a 26-page document on scoring, I know every word of it. So if we're gonna battle it out in AccuScore, we're gonna battle it out based off of what you have written down. And in black and white, it's really hard to try to pull one over on somebody if they know the score sheet well enough. So
Right. I
but I
agree.
do think I've run into that a little bit, but sometimes you have to just call it out for what it is. I would really hope that you're not trying to punish me for trying to create a better cheer by not
Mhm.
letting this be overturned. I know that's
Right.
not what's going on because you guys are great people. So let's talk about let's talk about, what's in your packet based off of the scoring,
Yeah.
So I think anytime that it's been questionable, it has not been hurtful, but there's been much more cold shoulders and people unhappy with me. But again, I'm unhappy with you. So we can just
Sure.
both be unhappy with each other from across the room.
Yeah, I think any great advocate is going to ruffle feathers. And if you're actually going to be a great advocate looking for change, you have to be okay with that.
And I am. And it's not that I don't
Mhm.
want people, it's not that I want people to think that like I'm cold or I'm not likable. I just, again, my like North Star is it going to benefit the people that believe in my ability to speak for them? Because not
Right.
everybody is willing to write an email to the powers that be. Not every,
Right.
I mean, these are the same people that are not willing to write an email to the awful parent in their gym that is recruiting out of their program. So I
Yep.
think it is understandable that there are some people that just don't feel confident. They feel confident in how they feel, but they don't feel confident in voicing it. And if I can take off that, if I can hear them, if they
Mhm.
engage and allow me to, and if we have a unifying idea or thing that we feel like we need to push for, I will be that voice because I'm not worried about being that voice.
Right.
My mom is an international corporate attorney. Like I grew up with like a strong woman who was willing to speak her mind in a man's world. My dad is a physician. He's a doctor and is in academia. So he does a lot and he's a dean of a medical school. So I've got parents who are strong leaders in their, respective,
Hmm.
you know, careers. And me, I'm like, I want to be a cheer coach, like I have a sister who's a doctor and a sister who's a lawyer. And I was like, I want to be a cheer coach.
Yeah.
But I grew up with parents who did what they felt like was right, regardless
Mhm.
of whether people around them loved it or not.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it is just to my core that like I can I can shuttle out all the noise and just keep
Yeah.
moving forward. And I know not
Yeah.
everybody can do that, but
Yeah.
sometimes it makes me a little
Absolutely.
cold, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, so much great info here. Thanks so much for spending some time with us on the Fireside Chat podcast. And if people are not currently part of the Small Cheer Gym Facebook group, is that something that, if they want to get involved in this and they're qualified?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would say small cheer gym association. And there's like 4 questions you have to answer because, Susie's mom always tries to get into the small gym page. So you have
Yep.
to answer those questions. And then I'd kind of have like a really no nonsense rule. Like there are some things that we post that I intentionally know are going to get shared and they need to be shared. So stuff like that doesn't bother me. There's some things that are in confidence people post in there that like if I find out you're like screenshotting and sharing stuff from other gyms, we'll boot you. But ask to join the page. I'll filter through the requests. And then really again, the call to action right now is no matter what umbrella you fall under, completely independent, open, championship series, United/varsity, like there are things that we're hearing from all sides of the aisle that if people will just stand up and have a unified conversation amongst the other small gyms, I think that there's common ground. And I think that if we can find that common ground and hand that common ground off to these entities and just say, this is what it feels like on our end would be really helpful. They want to hear it and they want to listen. So get on there, call to action. If you can't go in person to these conferences, all of these different entities have summer conferences.
Hmm.
And the best place to get things done is at these conferences. Yes, they're expensive. Yes, it takes money to get there. Yes, it takes time. But these people are all together in the same room, all the decision makers at one time, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so I'm a believer in like go to the conferences. Like
Hmm.
whatever gang and umbrella you're under, go to the conferences. But be active, know what's going on. And sometimes it feels like it's just happening in your gym, but it's happening a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
So I think don't be afraid to link up with other people. And I am great friends by design with pretty much every gym around me because we have similar problems, similar struggles, and we're in the same market. That doesn't work for everybody, but we literally have a group message that we talk on all the time. Hey, are y'all closing today? The weather's looking crazy. Are y'all closing or are you staying open? Okay, well,
Hmm.
why are you closing? Why are you staying open? And I think that united front helps us. And
Hmm.
if one of my kids walks in the door of one of those gyms, they're going to call me. And if one of their kids walks in my door, I'm going to call them. even just as a courtesy. So I think there's a lot we can be doing, but join the page, Small Cheer Gym Association. I'm Catherine Weeden, Catherine Flack Weeden, and get involved and have a voice. If you don't know what's hurting your gym or helping your gym, it's never going to grow and it's not going to be around for very long.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fireside Chat. If you are looking for additional help with your business, make sure that you head over to nextgenowners.com. We have some really exciting stuff that is starting to be released in the next couple of weeks, and I definitely don't want you guys to miss a thing. Also, make sure that you are in our Facebook groups, the Cheer Gym Owners Facebook group, and All-Star Cheer Coaches and Owners. Again, thanks so much for listening. Make sure you go subscribe to this channel and leave us a review.